A lot of the internet these days feels pretty bought and paid for, don't you think? Well, at Escape Collective, we are also bought and paid for. The difference being that we are bought and paid for by you, which changes things dramatically. We're a member-funded group of journalists, and we call the shots. No hidden agendas, no sneaky links. Just trust. escapecollective.com/join. Support what we do.
Hello and welcome to Geek Warning, the podcast that puts the world's most interesting cycling tech and tech conversations into one place. I'm Dave Rome, Senior Tech Editor for Escape Collective, and joining me this week...
I'm Ronan McLaughlin, Tech Editor at Escape Collective.
And I'm Alex Hunt, Tech Reporter at Escape Collective.
Good to see you both. What bike did you all ride last? And Ronan, I know it's 9 a.m. for you. You've just come back from 3 hours of testing somehow, so what were you on?
I was on what is currently a tire testing mule bike.
Okay.
Was previously a Campagnolo gravel bike.
But
will once again be a Campagnolo gravel bike once I get done with this testing. But yeah,
I would say it is still a Campagnolo gravel bike, regardless of what tires it has.
Yeah, but I like to reference it. I like to refer to it as my testing mule.
Okay, all right.
Because
the artist formerly known as a Campagnolo gravel bike.
Hmm.
Nice. And Alex?
The RCRF for me was the last bike I rode. Still getting to understand what that bike is and who it's for. So, yeah.
How's the lower lumbar flexibility?
You definitely feel it. You definitely feel it after the 2 hour mark, that's for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bike to go for a nice leisurely pootle around the lanes on.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, to mix things up, the last bike I rode was a Yeti SB140. So,
Nice.
Slightly different end of the spectrum. Yeah. Bit of turquoise. So, nice bike. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, this week we've got our usual banter about the happenings in the world of cycling tech. There's a few things on our mind. There's a return to a quick conversation about Campagnolo. I managed to get my hands on a WheelTop wireless group that I installed for someone, and I have some early thoughts on that. And yeah, we'll finish up with a little bit of a PSA, bit of tech news happening in the industry, and a few new products. And of course, we'll wrap up with Ask a Wrench. This week, Ask a Wrench will be recorded with myself and Zach Edwards of the Boulder Gruppetto. And as always, you'll need to be a member of Escape Collective in order to listen. All right, let's kick things off. Ronan, I think you've got a bit of a clarifications, I feel misunderstood corner.
Yes, I do. And it is about both the article that I published recently was like a checklist for how to buy an aero bike, and the conversation that happened on last week's In For Review episode of Geek Warning, which I was not at. So, but and specifically,
invited to.
I was invited to. Yes, sorry, I didn't mean it in that way. I just meant I couldn't make it. And specifically about the bike, Alex, that you actually just mentioned, the RCRF, because I was listening throughout that, and I haven't actually seen the geometry chart yet for that bike, but it sounded very much like the type of geometry that actually I had been calling for in previous articles in a previous podcast with Rob English, like a progressive geometry that allowed riders to get much further forward, as is the trend at the moment, without having to get like a excessively long stem. And I think that plays into the misunderstanding that I feel has sort of stemmed from my article about how to pick an aero bike, because while I used examples of bikes that were too aggressive for the rider, it equally applies to bikes that are not aggressive enough for a particular rider. It's not one direction or the other. It's just pick a geometry that allows you to get into an aero position for you. The challenge that I'm bumping up against is that with many of the current geometries on many of the aero bikes that I've tested, and with wanting to adopt this more forward saddle position, I then can't get enough reach. And so long and low might actually be okay if that is what allows you to adopt your most aero position.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, like in the podcast that we did on performance process and the article that followed, I mean, the whole point of why we why you honed in on the whole subject of aero road bikes was out of performance.
Yes.
So I think it's it's not just that race bike coming with a stem that's too long and not allowing an upright enough position. It actually arguably is that you condoning the two-piece cockpit is probably more about the ability to go longer and narrower at the same time, which one-piece cockpits also don't allow. So yeah.
Well, I mean, if they're in the right size, but what's the chances of getting the right size? But anyway, it's kind of. I am interested in this RCRF because I actually haven't just pulled it up on Geometry Geeks now. In my size, the geometry doesn't look all that aggressive at all. It's like higher than an SL8 at the front. But obviously in your size, Alex, it's very different.
Yeah, I think with RCRF, as you go down the sizes, they don't necessarily adjust in line with other bikes, especially as you get to the extra small. I remember talking about that on the podcast, and I think that bike is actually a struggle for most people who fit on that bike to actually get a good fit.
And again, one of the things that you brought up was the stem length that comes with it, which is that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about usable aero.
Yeah, that extra small RCR almost reminded me a little bit of like a bike for Caleb Ewan, where it's like small rider but not that small, but just like a smallish rider that needs a much bigger bike than what the seat tube would typically allow, and a much longer bike than what the seat tube length would normally allow, and that kind of struck me as the sort of rider that would ideally suit that extra small. But anyway,
and also that was it was a standard that Suvi was talking about on that same show, and you've just reminded me of something else that I was listening to that conversation, and it reminded me of the Only Fools and Horses sketch, Trigger's Broom. And for anybody who's not aware of that, Trigger got an award for having a broom that was 20 years old. At some point he let it slip that it had like 14 new heads and 12 new shafts or something like that, and so is it still the same brush? And the reason I thought of that was because if a geometry is so different between the smallest sizes and the largest sizes, like there's no even consistency. You can't like plot it on a graph and see a straight line or a curve or whatever. It's just basically an entirely different bike. Then is it the same? Is it the same bike? At what point is it just Trigger's Broom, where it's got the same name but it's an entirely different type of bike? And it very much sounded like that with some of the feedback that Suvi had.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I mean that company standard actually even call out using a completely different geometry philosophy for the three smaller sizes of that frame. So something that
is it that frame then?
Review.
That's my question. Is that not just a different frame? Should it not just have a different name?
They'll share the same bottom bracket standard, and I guess the same construction quality, but that's probably where the similarities may.
Anyway, most of my feeling of being misunderstood stemmed from like the comments on the article that I published about the bike buying checklist and usable aero, because I should have been clear. Well, I should have been clearer that it applies in both directions, and I had only really used examples of a bike being too aggressive, but similarly a bike can be not aggressive enough for you. The point remains, you get your bike fit done first and then find a geometry that allows you to achieve that fit.
Let's shift gears a bit. Sorry, I didn't even mean to make that horrible pun. I apologize to everyone listening. It's time to talk Campagnolo. Last week, we discussed that there's been photos and group sets circling on Cofidis's bikes of what looks to be new 13-speed wireless EPS from Campagnolo, and I mean we've seen more photos, and it sort of confirms what we'd suggested we'd seen in lurking around, which is that Campagnolo seems to be working on a new shifter that brings back the thumb lever. Any thoughts on this?
I'm happy to see this change though. I haven't spent much time on the current Super Record, but the time I have spent, I don't have the biggest hands, and actually reaching the lower shift levers has been an issue that has kind of jaded the experience a little bit for what is such a premium group set. So the move back to the thumb shifter should make it a far more pleasant experience if I do end up on a bike with that group set in the future.
Yeah, I always thought the previous EPS ergonomics were actually quite nice, like very, very familiar if you'd ever used mechanical Campagnolo, and Yeah, so seeing them go back to it, and it looks like a really refined shifter shape. It looks a bit more svelte than previous, and probably a bit more in line with where Shimano's at these days. So yeah, I'm kind of eager to see this come out. Of course, it's going to be priced to the sky, but SRAM has set new expectations there anyway. So I think it's probably going to be comparable.
It is refreshing in some ways that Campagnolo they've effectively listened and they have acted pretty quickly to address something that just wasn't working. Like I had one ride on that wireless group set, and as such I had to caveat everything I said, but I was pretty straight down the line with my opinion that new setup just did not work. We said it in the review that I had done. As much as you could call a review based on one ride, but anyway, that was all we were given. We were promised, we were promised a group set which never came, because I think by that point Campagnolo had just realized that actually this isn't a longer term review isn't going to elicit an any more positive experience for me, I don't think. And now a couple of years later, I'm not saying they've listened to me, but we did say that in the review, we did say that in the podcast, and whoever they've listened to, they've obviously listened, because 2 years later it's been addressed.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was at a Bike Connection event in Italy in March, Campagnolo were there with nothing really new to show, but there to talk to journalists and give us some stuff to ride, including that current Super Record group. And I have to say, they were really good at holding their hands up and listening to journalists and trying to get an impression of what the viewers of Campagnolo as a brand and of the products, and it really came across that they were trying to improve their image and improve what they can offer to kind of get back into the mainstream a bit more. So yeah, fair play to them for taking the time to meet and chat to a journalist on that front.
To put things in context, Escape Collective is older than the group set that they're now replacing,
and we're still teething.
I mean, there's going to be there's so much more interesting about this, or there could be a lot more interesting features about this group set. Also, we don't know yet. But the return of the thumb shifter seems to be a step in the right direction, because presumably, if you preferred presumably you can adjust what each button does to your own preferences, and that's kind of why it didn't make sense to get rid of it for me previously. You can just not use it if you don't want to.
Yeah. So I think this is this the fifth? Will this be the 5th or the 6th generation of EPS? There was 3 generations of 11 speed, and then I think there was a wired 12 speed, 4, wireless 12 speed, 5. Okay.
Wasn't there like an update at some point where they had like a new EPS interface and a new power unit? Basically their battery and junction box, if you're thinking in DA2 terms.
I thought that was like version 1 to version 2, but it could be something in 12 speed as well. But either way, 5th or 6th, maybe 7th. But either way, I'm feeling good about this next generation. And I couldn't say that about the previous ones. So yeah, just based on photos, this may be a turning point for Campagnolo. Anyway, let's move on. Plenty to see there, and hopefully we can get our hands on some photos by the time we publish this, so you can actually see the thing on Escape Collective.
We should have a drinking game. Every time we say Escape Collective, you have to take a Nootropics gel at home.
Careful, they might have a laxative effect.
Shit happens.
All right. Well, speaking of new group sets, this has been a bit on my mind. Yeah, I managed to install a WheelTop EDS OX2.0 derailleur and shifter. So this is a mountain bike shifter and derailleur that comes sort of as a combo kit, and it's designed to work with just about like anything on the market. I think you can program it to work from anything to like from 3 to 14 speed cassettes. And you can choose like the spacing for each individual gear as well. So it's meant to be like this highly adaptable system that you can basically just fit to any bike that has the right kind of cassette ratio. So this particular one was going on an e-bike in place of like a XT Shimano 12-speed derailleur and shifter. Reused like the Shimano 12-speed chain and cassette and installed it in place. And I have to say, like, there's some really nice things about it. The price is one. Like it is, I think the price of like the derailleur, which has a built-in battery, which is roughly 2.5 times the capacity of like a ETAP battery. Yeah, so you get the derailleur, you get the cable, you get the shifter. All of that was roughly in terms of price, maybe 50 Australian less than just like a SRAM GX derailleur alone. So then you then normally have to buy the battery and the charger and the shifter as well. So it's a few $100 Australian less. I don't know about other currencies, but it's probably $100 to $200 less in the US. When buying this on a deal. But for me, I guess it just reminded me of like how refined the likes of Shimano and SRAM are at the moment, and that WheelTop, while I think they'll eventually get there, they're not quite there yet. So yeah, I don't know. Have you guys played with any of the WheelTop or sort of other up and coming, largely Chinese branded components?
No, I haven't had a chance yet. Well, is it the WheelTop one that has the feature that they say is like if you've got a bent derailleur hanger, you can individually tune each gear? Because it's just surely the solution there is replace your mech hanger.
Yeah, I think that is a foolish selling point of that feature.
Yeah.
I think that feature exists for like overcoming differing spacing between different brands of cassette and chain. I don't think. Yeah, I think it. I have seen like the likes of GCN sort of say that you could use that feature for that purpose. I don't think that's I think the amount of time you would spend in a work stand dialing in each cog because of your bent hanger,
I don't think you would do it in a work stand. That's kind of you would do it on the side of the road.
No, but even then, like the amount of time you'd spend dialing that in, I think you could walk your bike to the third furthest away bike shop and have your hanger straightened and replaced. So like I don't know. I think it exists as a feature, but that also reminds me of how terrible the app user interface was. And I'm told that they're actively working on this, but I had a hell of a time. Like very easy to connect it Bluetooth, very easy for the app to show the derailleur and shifter. Very difficult to understand how to take it a step further and actually adjust things on it.
So the app is pretty poor. Are we talking like Campagnolo My EPS V1 app bad?
Yes.
Or worse than that?
Yeah. No, I would say pretty similar. A lot of functionality, but not in an obvious way. A lot of poorly translated English, which doesn't help. A lot of information in there, but not in a really well organized menus. I was able to connect it Bluetooth, but then for some reason it kept telling me I need to connect the derailleur in order to adjust it, even though I'm in the screen with it saying it's connected. And there was like a little secret button that I had to push that then actually connected it. Yeah.
I'm joking a bit there, but I mean, WheelTop would not be alone in the cycling industry to this day and having a terribly functioning app.
Correct. Yeah, most brands that have products with an app have a terrible app. But yeah, this one particularly annoyed me because you cannot adjust the derailleur without it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no way to like micro tune the derailleur position, and in order to calibrate it to the bike and to the cassette, you have to use the app. So for me, it kind of just was a real frustrating point.
That is a good feature though, if you think about it, because when you are stuck at the side of the trail with a bent hanger, you will have been forced to have taken your phone with you to be able to set up the gears to work with that bent hanger. So at least you'll have your phone with you to ring a bike shop to get some help also.
That's true. Yeah. So the app was one issue. The other issue I had was like, it was on a Merida e-bike with Shimano 12 speed. I wouldn't have thought that is too weird for a derailleur that can technically do 14 speed, but I was unable to get the derailleur spaced far enough out to keep the chain in the 10-tooth cog. So I actually had to custom make a washer to put behind the mounting bolt to push the whole derailleur out further. It was the only way it was going to happen. So for me, that just kind of tells me like they're close, but I guess they're lacking like that refinement that comes through having multiple partners in the industry as far as like OE and being able to like work on the dimensions set out by one Shimano and SRAM, but also then test it with a multitude of bikes. And yeah, I think that'll just come with experience. And yeah, I'm optimistic. Like these are things they'll fix quickly, but in the meantime, it does feel like they're using a lot of customers as beta testers before they get there.
Do they offer a 14-speed cassette WheelTop themselves?
No, their whole shtick is like sell you the derailleurs and shifters, and yep.
I'm just wondering, like, if it's compatible with 14-speed, where do you get a 14-speed cassette?
I think that's the funny part is they've figured out that every, we spoke about this last week. It was the title of the podcast. 13 speed is kind of the future. WheelTop is one ahead. They've figured out if 13 speed is the future, then inevitably, eventually, 14 speed will be here.
Should really be called Shift Top, not WheelTop. Dave, you had in our run sheet here that anyone saying this stuff is on par with Shimano and SRAM isn't correct. And I'm wondering if there is anyone not just trying to hack the YouTube algorithm to get views, actually saying that this stuff is on par with. So are there any non-YouTubers saying that? I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere else.
It's predominantly on YouTube that I've seen it. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think it comes down to maybe being an element of like, what are you comparing it to? Like, what's your benchmark if you're saying that? Yeah, maybe they have used other components from other brands. Was it set up correctly? I can't answer that. Did they spend as much time installing it or trying to figure out the nuances of it as they would have with this one? I don't know. Again, it's great value. I think they will get there. I was initially worried that this is sort of like a disposable product, but I have actually been able to quite easily find like replacement cage assemblies at a really affordable prices. So that's positive. We'll see. I mean, that integrated battery is another thing to consider. Yeah, I mean, time will tell how well this stuff lasts. But again, I think the way these brands go is they come from a point of copying and being inspired by pre-existing options. And it takes them a little while to get to a point, but eventually these brands with enough investment refine and become true competitors. And I think WheelTop is an example of not being there just yet, but what I'm seeing is getting more and more refined. Like, the stuff that I saw 2 to 3 years ago was pretty bad, and this latest stuff, I'm like, yeah, I can see how someone would like it. It's just not what I would pick. It's also not what I'd recommend just yet, but we'll see. I'm meant to be getting some to test in the near future, so yeah, more to come on this one. I'm going to try test something on the drop bar space with a similar derailleur and see how it goes. But yeah, there's some interesting features here.
Yeah, well, Dave, I'm hoping that you do get one in for review, because it would be good to get your ride impressions and all sorts. I suspect you'll probably go for a mountain bike option here, but I quite like the look of the road levers. So I would like to see.
Gravel was what I decided on.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought you'd ask for road. I wanted to test mountain bike, so I compromised it in my mind and picked gravel.
I mean, what is gravel if not half mountain bike, half road?
Exactly. So, yeah, anyway. And to make it a true gravel group set, I'll be putting on a 90s mountain bike and setting it to 9-speed. No. All right. Well, let's move on from that one. I mean, yeah, we'll definitely come back to that topic. I think WheelTop is a brand to watch, and yeah, more to come. All right, let's move on from what's been on our mind to a little bit of a PSA, and this one comes from something that came up while I was searching for a certain talk setting on the weekend using Google. And Google now has its Google AI Overview, which summarizes various other articles and YouTube and all that to give you the answer without having you to make that pesky click and potentially even give someone your eyeballs that's put the time into creating said content. Not better. But yeah, this one I was searching for the torque of a certain bolt. And Google AI Overview suggested that bolt needs to be tightened to 300 Newton meters.
Seems fair.
Being that it was a T25 bolt made of aluminium, I knew that was incorrect. And eventually I found the correct torque. Any guesses as to what it was?
Not 300.
Yep, that is correct. I think the weight of the torque wrench that would do 300 Newton meters would have been enough to snap the bolt. 4.5 Newton meters was the correct torque. So yeah. Anyway, I guess my PSA is that the way search engines are going at the moment and the way people are searching for information, AI is becoming rather prevalent, whether you choose to want it or not. And my PSA is be wary of it for stuff like this.
My PSA is that they tell us AI stands for artificially intelligent, but it actually means actually inept, or actually ignorant, or actually insane, actually idiotic.
Yep.
Actually,
So,
actually ill-informed.
I was doing some research for some stuff the other week, and an AI search engine actually told me that both TJ Van Garderen and Chris Froome won Roubaix. So
I got the same.
did you?
How is this happening? No, I didn't get Chris Froome. I got TJ Van Garderen. No, sorry. Joe Dombrowski and his superb win at the 2019 Paris-Roubaix. And apparently TJ Van Garderen was in the high up in the results in the same race. Which, yeah, actually insane, as I said.
yep. So don't blindly trust what's Google or related, ChatGPT or all that are telling you when it comes to potentially safety critical things that you may or may not be doing to your bike. I would always recommend check with the manufacturer directly, take the extra effort, and for that I'd recommend, using Google, but search for things like, you type in the brand, the product name, and
then Escape Collective.
And then Escape Collective, or Escape Collective and the words manual or PDF or service manual or various other things, and find the provided actual service documents from the manufacturer wherever possible. Yeah, the AI summaries for now, I would not trust.
I think Google and Apple are by far the worst. That Google version is just forced upon you when you now search for anything, and I actually don't mind that it's forced upon me, because it's just often quite hilarious how incorrect it is.
Yep. Yeah.
Brightens
Yeah,
up
and
my
it's
day.
like it can be quite funny, but yeah, I guess if you're about to tighten a bolt that potentially is about to destroy a $500-$600 component, double check it. Do your
Although I
research.
have seen some quick releases that were tightened to 300 Newton meters over the years.
How did you undo them?
I didn't. I sent them on their way and told them never to come back.
I've always gone by the saying of it can't hold tight if it's molten. Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Quick little PSA on that one, but let's get to some quick tech bites before we wrap up the episode with an Ask a Wrench segment. So, yeah, top of the list, SRAM. They'd had a few quiet weeks. We'd gone, I think, 3 weeks without a SRAM product release, but we're back. SRAM transmission. They've now got an upgrade kit to convert the recently released Eagle T70 or T90 mechanical transmission derailleurs. You can now convert them into Axis electronic. So just in case you have a bike with mechanical derailleurs and you wanted no mechanical derailleur, for US $550, SRAM now has a kit that will change out the derailleur body and give you a charger and a battery, a shifter, and a quick link to convert your existing derailleur cage and mounting bolt into Axis. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Can I get a bit of context around this? Why? It kind of, like, if you were reading this in April Fools, it'd be like, oh yeah, April Fools. But I don't think it's a stupid thing. I just mean it's very surprising.
Yeah, I think it's OE play in that it's basically aimed at people that may purchase a bike with mechanical transmission and perhaps want to get rid of the shift cable, and SRAM basically now has a way to keep them on its system. So I think that's, yeah.
When GX was available in mechanical and electronic, that was a very, very popular upgrade in the shops in the UK. It was for people to get a bike with mechanical GX and then pay the couple of £100 to upgrade it to AXS. So if that's something to go by, I think this will be a popular upgrade for people that want to get some electronic drivetrain on a bike that didn't come with it standard.
So it's basically the only thing that remains is the hanger.
No, the mount bolt and the cage assembly.
Sorry, when I said hanger, I meant pulley wheel hanger. The cage,
you're not keeping a lot of the existing stuff. I mean, you're reusing cassette chain ring, crank, all that, but yeah, it's replacing a lot of it.
Again, as I said, it's a bit outside my wheelhouse, and so I'm. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
exactly. I wasn't
not
exactly
really.
aware of the context there, but it just seems like something that you would hear people asking for one of these manufacturers to do, but the manufacturers have no actual interest in doing it, and SRAM have actually done
Yeah.
it, and so I was kind of wondering what the context is.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what sort of support and I guess what more importantly what sort of demand this has, because US $550 isn't nothing for a derailleur and shifter. But yeah, I don't know. I suspect they've done their research, and as Alex, as you said, like they've done this before with pre-transmission. They had a very similar thing, and it did seem like it sold a lot back then.
It'll be interesting to see if this changes anyone's buying decisions for bikes that come with the S1000, the kind of OE electronic version, whether people will maybe not go for that because they know they can upgrade to GX in the future now. So yeah, it will be for sure be interesting to see how that plays out across the whole ecosystem and the interest in the OE S1000 group compared to GX or
For sure.
the mechanical transmission.
For sure. And I do think a few bike shops will probably convince customers to buy this that maybe on e-bikes with terrible through headset cable routing with mechanical transmission, and they're like, yeah, we can do a new cable and housing for you and spend an hour and a half labor for it, or we can take it out and you won't ever have to have this this labor bill ever again. So I think that might just be where the biggest demand lays. But yeah.
How does it compare to pricing if SRAM didn't offer this upgrade kit and you just went for, what are we looking at, like a GX would be the entry to a full mount transmission axis derailleur and the shifters that you would need to go with that? Basically, if you didn't use the upgrade option, then you just went and got a derailleur.
Yeah, so GX Eagle transmission derailleur by itself is $400 USD, and then you'd still have to get a battery, a shifter, a charger, which would certainly cost you a couple hundred or more after that. Okay. So yeah, I mean it's probably, I actually haven't priced it up, but I'd say it's at least $100 saving US.
Cool.
Versus just buying a whole thing with and giving yourself a spare cage assembly, which may be worth having.
I like that it includes a quick release link.
A quick link, yeah. SRAM very subtly reminding you not to reuse them with that inclusion.
Yeah.
So all right, well, let's move on to the next thing, which is Canyon have updated or in the process of updating a lot of their Ultimate and Endurace road bike models. So one thing is like they've given a few of the models upgraded seat clamps, which now sort of separate the fore and aft and the angle adjustment. But the big upgrade is in the front end with the pace bar. So they're basically repurposing the bar off of their Aeroad model, that sort of adjustable width, replaceable hook bar, and they're introducing that to basically the entire carbon fiber road range now. Ronan, have you spent some time on that Aeroad pace bar?
I have, yes. As recently as this week. I still have the Aeroad that I found it? Covered last summer. Kind of as I was suspecting you might, in that, you know, you've got this option of changing from a classic shape drop to an aero flared drop. I'm not going to use the word aero, actually. Forget that I said that. Let's just call it a flared drop. And as I suspected, you kind of just, whichever one is fitted there, you just kind of get on with it and leave it as it is. It is useful for travel. I am not a huge fan of the flare, but despite that, the flare is mounted, and so I kind of have just left it there. But if I'm really honest, what I'm skirting around saying here is just that the whole thing kind of scares me, because I'm just aware that it's always in the back of my mind that, you know, bolts can vibrate loose, and there are a lot of bolts in this setup that both on the adjustable width part and also on the Canyon's take on the quill stem, where, I mean, if Vanderpool can get through Roubaix with it, it probably is going to be fine for a lot of vibrations. And I also wrap the bar tape over the bolts that you use for the width adjust, so hopefully that would cut down a little bit. But I'm always weary, like if someone had this bike for 5, 6, 7 years and paid no attention to it, could something go wrong there?
Well, yeah, I mean, the more complexity something has, the more adjustment options, the more moving parts the thing has, the more chance it has of like misuse and failure as well. So, and I guess, yeah, your biggest fear might not be failure, but just that your bar becomes wider. That's a joke.
The drag. Think of the drag.
Yeah. So anyway, like I think this is a play. You know, I think yes, it's a cool feature, but realistically, what this bar is about is it gives width adjustment to a single handlebar. So they have 50mm width adjustment off a single bar, and for a consumer direct company for like Canyon, I think it's all about having fewer parts to have to try please a customer with. So you know, they have what's effectively now one handlebar width for everyone, and no one complains. And the only thing customers then need to, ideally, from Canyon's point of view, not worry about is stem length. But realistically, you should be worrying about stem length. So, yeah, I think that's the play here. But
I think there's another element to it as well, and that just the setup makes it like it is easier to add the drops to a bike that arrives at your door and tighten those up than it is to assemble and tighten correctly a headset and stem bolts and all that. If you're not a mechanic,
sure.
and you don't know what you're looking at, and so I think it's both easier to ship and it's easier for the end user to assemble, and that's obviously a big motivation for a company like Canyon that
but
are
still not
consumer direct.
easy.
No, I'm not saying it is, but I think the biggest part of the two things I mentioned there is that it's easier to get into a box for Canyon.
Sure. I think, yeah, fundamentally it's all about shipping bikes, you know, the fact of like, yeah, having a bar that will suit almost everyone, and also, yeah, as you say, like fitting in the said box, I think is key things. But anyway, it's coming to the Endurace, it's coming to the Ultimate.
Just before we do move on, my main issue with that handlebar was just the fact that a size large or 56 Air Road came with a 100mm stem that you had no option to change before ordering. If you were buying an Air Road, which is
80?
No, I mean, I want there to be choice. If someone's investing in an aero performance bike of that level, again, getting back to our whole thing about usable aero, I thought Canyon's stock stem length was particularly egregious on that bike. They do now offer an option. There was always the option to buy the T section of the handlebars separately and get a longer length, but that costs quite a bit on top of an already, a lot of money to buy the bike. And they do now have a way that you can spec the stem length that you want, and even that's not
only
perfect
at the top
in my
end.
opinion. And I just I have said it before and I will say it again, you can select the color of stitching you want in a Ford Fiesta, and these bikes these days cost more than that, and we can't get them to fit. So
it's just such a depressing comparison.
Yeah, and that's not Canyon alone. That's there are a few exceptions to that norm.
Yep. All right. Well, yeah. One to watch for if you're in the market for a Canyon. That's coming out any day now. But yeah, and I guess the one other thing to add on the pace bar is it does add the optional accessories from Canyon. So there's direct mounting for like aero bars from Canyon. There's direct mounting for their own computer mount. So yeah, it sort of does open up the scope for those people that want to maybe buy an Ultimate or an Endurace to use for like the occasional club triathlon or something like that. So yeah, I mean, there's some nice features here, but all right, I guess let's talk about a few of the industry happenings. There's been a bit of movement. Most of the time when we talk about industry things lately, it feels all doom and gloom, but there's a little bit of positivity, which is that Rocky Mountain is back. The long-standing Canadian, largely mountain bike brand, have secured new investors, new ownership under Chaos Sports Inc., which is four Quebec-based entrepreneurs. Put some money in and set up a company, and they brought it back, and sounds like they're going to be honoring warranties and product support for those that have already on the branded bike from previous owners. So I think that's some cool news. I mean, too early to tell whether things will work out. I mean, it's not a great market to be coming back in, but any thoughts?
It's just good to see. It's a brand I remember when I was getting into mountain biking, Rocky Mountains were always in the magazines and a bike I'd lost after, so to see the brand continuing is always nice to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a company that owns bikes.com needs to live on, they've been at it that long. So Yeah. All right. Well, that's the positive news. The negative news in the industry is that Pierre Mobility Group, they're really big in the motorcycle world. They have a lot of like quite large motorcycle brands, and some of those are such as Gas and Husqvarna, but they have actually decided to close down a lot of their e-bike division. So Gas e-bikes and Husqvarna e-bikes are going to be shutting down globally. So quite a big move after years of investment from both of those companies. And the other interesting thing here is that Pierre Mobility Group actually owns a 70% stake in Felt Bicycle. According to Bicycle Retail and Industry News, the report is that Pierre Mobility, as for Felt, quote, considering strategic options, which to me reads like the brand is for sale.
Do you think there are more people interested in buying a Felt or in buying Felt?
Felt. Yeah.
It's a brand that, I mean, back in the early Slipstream days, you know, the want for a Felt was very, very high. Some of the bikes that they had.
That and Argyle socks. Very trendy.
No. Incorrect. Moving on. But yeah, I mean, they're still with the Human Powered Health team. Dylan Johnson rides one, but
yeah,
it's just a brand that we don't hear all that much about of late, and hopefully,
yeah, they do some interesting bikes, but they just kind of keep failing to really crack through and be one that everyone really adds to their consideration list. It seems. But yeah, I don't know where they end up from here. I mean, I'd say they've had a rocky few years. They seem to have gone from owner to owner, and perhaps never quite found their footing since.
And I think I was about to get to that, because I think that's, you know, the decline of the, I don't know if we can say the decline of the brand, but certainly the decline of the demand for Felt.
Yeah, I
would say is directly linked to the fact that they've been from owner to owner, and that the instability that brings. And so like the hope here would be, you know, if Pierre Mobility Group now is considering strategic options for the Felt brand, that someone who can do better things with it gets a hold of it, and the people in there who can no doubt do good work, we've seen good work from Felt in the past, get the opportunity to do that again.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so certainly a brand we don't want to see disappear, but I don't know, in this climate and just how depressed the bike industry is at the moment, I just don't know who's gonna keep that brand alive. But yeah, there's enough equity there that it does sound like Pierre don't want to just like close it down. So yeah, I guess time will tell. One to watch. All right, well, before we get to Ask a Wrench, I guess, just a little bit of a shameless plug, which is I've got threaded at the end of this week, and it's a topic I've been thinking about for weeks on end, even though the deeper I get into it, the more I question why am I thinking about it at all, which is it's a whole article dedicated to dried tubeless sealant. And it largely started with coming across bikes where people had like tubeless flats and just done nothing about it, and the sealant would just like build up and dry onto the paint over time. And all the regular solvents and chemicals that you'd find, you know, normally in a bicycle workshop literally wouldn't cut it. And you'd end up like just trying to like pick this stuff off with your fingers. And often if it was like a glossy paint, even that wouldn't, like with your fingernails, you couldn't even scratch it off. And yeah, I've kind of come across some products which I'll be covering that actually do the job, and that I can have tested and set up test protocols for, and happy to now write an article about the thing. So yeah, do check it out. But I did just have a humorous moment where I was had gone to the trouble. I'd spent a week researching someone's tubeless sealant remover, had found the safety data sheets for it, had looked at the chemicals and the compositions, had Googled for those chemicals and compositions, had found what looked to be the industrial option of that product, had bought that product, and then spent a while try to do blind testing where I was sniffing these toxic chemicals back and forth, trying to figure out if they are in fact the same. And as I'll reveal, you'll have to read the article, but turns out the answer was in front of me all the time. They are the same, and the original safety data sheet I was looking at actually has the file name of the industrial product that I went to the trouble of buying and researching and finding myself, and thinking I was being a ultimate sleuthing detective, where the answer was right in front of me all along.
Tell me you at least come to that conclusion, and that you hadn't convinced yourself there was a difference.
I had come to that conclusion. I was like, well, aren't I smart? I've figured this out. I've cracked the case. And then I look again at the safety data sheet from the cycling company. I was like, oh, crap. So,
well,
yeah.
At least
anyway.
you know your nose has been well calibrated.
Yep. Well, it's probably not anymore. But anyway, the lightheadedness has gone away now.
Don't try this at home.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for Ask a Wrench. So, yeah, as always, Ask a Wrench, it's exclusively available for members of Escape Collective. There it is again. And yeah, if you'd like to keep listening, then you need to be on the member feed of Escape Collective. So head to escapecollective.com/join, become a member, support everything we do. And in a few easy steps, you'll be able to keep listening to the rest of this episode. And if you want to make it even easier, once you are a member and you're on the website, our podcast page.
Dave, stop it. Stop it.
Okay, sorry.
People have heard this 100 times. What we need to actually just say is, if you're listening to this and you have the option to be a member, if you can afford that, and you haven't yet done so, then when this podcast, or if this podcast disappears, it will be because of you. Because it only exists because of the people who have signed up.
It's harsh, but there's a strong amount of truth to it. Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean is, if we don't get enough people signing up, we don't have jobs anymore and the thing goes away. And so if you value our independent and honest takes on cycling, tech, and the discussions in this podcast, just sign up. If you can. For a lot of people, it won't be an option at the moment, but if you can.
I think that's the thing. So everyone listening that is on the free feed at the moment, as Ronan said, if you can afford it, we need you. That's a pretty strong.
What are we actually going to be answering in the Ask a Wrench then? If we need one more bit of convincing, what are they missing out on this week by not being a member?
So just this week alone, let's ignore every other week. This week alone, Zach and I will be chatting about what to do if you have a puncture of your tubeless tire and you've plugged it on the road or on the trail. We'll sort of talk about what we recommend there as far as once you're home, processes there. It is close to a question we've answered before, but we're back answering it again. Different opinions this time. We've also got a question about Cannondale crankset compatibility and how to deal with the AI, the offset that some of their bikes had or still have. And we finish up with a pretty big question about from someone who races a lot of different disciplines. They race cross-country, they race road, they race cyclocross, and they're kind of keen to know what tire types we recommend as far as being the best balance between performance and practicality. Plenty there, and all that you'll need to do is become a member to keep hearing it. Cool. All right, well, let's wrap it up. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And Alex, Ronan, good to see you. See you again soon. All right, time for Ask a Wrench.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.